Hi there. In this video we're going to be looking at trees and tree diagrams. This is typically something you'd see in the first couple of weeks of a finite mathematics course. For example, I know it's taught typically in week 2 at IU in M118. So this is corresponding to section 1.4 of the book Finite Mathematics by Daniel P. Maki and Maynard Thompson. We're going to be looking at one of the problems that was recommended by one of the instructors, and you wouldn't necessarily have to do this problem with a tree diagram, but so many students I've worked with sometimes have problems with tree diagrams, and I gotta admit, I really hate the way that most of the teachers here do tree diagrams. So we're going to do it a little differently, and I'm going to show you my methods for, number one, fitting all the stuff you got to put in a tree diagram on your piece of paper, and how I would solve the problem. And I actually would use a tree diagram for this. There are other options, but let's go ahead. This is one of the recommended problems from the instructors. This is number 27 in section 1.4. A telephone sales representative makes a sale, gets a tentative commitment, or fails to make a sale on each call. Today she plans to make telephone calls one after another until she makes 3 sales, gets 2 tentative commitments, or fails to make a sale. Her log for the day consists of a list of the calls with sale, tentative commitment, or no sale noted for each. How many possible logs are there? So the first thing I'm going to do when I start thinking about trees is I'm going to abbreviate, and I'm actually going to write down what my abbreviation is. So let's see, we're going to actually color code everything. So let's say that for sales is S, and that means sales. And for, non-commits or tentative commits, so that's a T. Tentative. Wow, that's kind of bad. I like to write everything down because you never want to get confused. And let's say that for failures we've got an F. Fail. Oh, can't spell fail today. I fail at spelling fail. Okay, so let's start by drawing our tree. So I'm gonna zoom in because trees can get pretty nasty pretty quick, and they can get pretty big. So I always personally like to do my trees from the top down. I find it easier to spread out a little bit more. So, I always like to also draw, whatever it is I'm talking about. So here's a little telephone, and let's start with failures, because there's an interesting thing. The minute she hits a failure, she stops making calls. And maybe that's not a great sign in a salesperson, but I really like it when I'm making trees, because that means once we hit to a fail, we stop with that part of the tree. We just move on. So let's go ahead and see. So if she makes her first call and it's a failure, that's going to be the end of it. And I like to box my leaves. So you have trees that are the whole thing, you have branches, and then at the very end of branches you have leaves. And so that one, that's pretty easy. So let's see, the next thing she's got are tentatives, right? And she calls and her first one's a tentative. Well, that's okay, nothing happens. And then finally, sales. So if she calls, and actually, because I know that this is going to get pretty long, I'm going to make that a little longer. It's going to get a little crowded. Sales. So don't be afraid to spread out. You want to spread out early, because when you start getting to these bigger trees, things get crowded pretty fast. So let's see. What happens on the second call? So we've got a couple options on the second call. The first thing is, she calls, and again, it's a failure. So I like those because that just means we can stop right there. The next option is if she makes a call and the second part of the call is tentative again. Well, that's easy enough. That just keeps on going. And what if she makes a call and it's a sale? Well, that means that keeps going too. So, well, that's easy enough. Let's look at what happens if she called the first time and she made a sale. So what are the options she's got? Well, and you'll notice I'm always keeping my fails to the left, my tentatives down, and my sales roughly to the right. And doing that, kind of having a direction makes it easier to follow your tree later on. So let's see, she could have a failure, she could have a tentative, and again, I'm kind of spreading out because it gets crowded really fast and it's hard to see everything. So I'm going to have to scroll around a little bit, so please bear with me, but I think it's better than not being able to see everything. So, whoops, I forgot, once she gets a failure, she stops. And I love that. And then I forgot something else. You know, on this first bit, and let me kind of trace it out so you can kind of see. If she calls and it's a tentative, and then she calls and she gets another tentative, well, what does that mean? That means she's going to stop calling right there. So that's another no more calls kind of deal. And I like that. That means that's another leaf we don't have to keep on going. So if she calls on the first one and makes a sale, and I'm going to just get myself ready. If she calls on the first one and makes a failure, she's going to stop. Tentative, nothing happens. She makes another sale, well, nothing happens. So we're just going to kind of keep on keeping on and see where we end up. So let's go from tentative, sale. Well, what happens if she first does a tentative call? We're on this tree right here. She's going to make a tentative, you know, the person's going to be like, maybe I'll buy it. Well, and then she makes a sale. Well, then she's got the option for a failure. So that one I love. Again, it just stops right there. Or it could be another tentative call. And I like that one too, because what does that mean? Well, that means that one stops right there, no more. Or she could make a sale. And that one's going to keep going, you know. Nothing there tells me to stop. So I'm going to keep on keeping on. And let's go to this tree over here. You know, and it's kind of hard sometimes to keep track of where you are, and it's really important. So we're on this part right here. And let's see, what's the first option? She makes a sale. The next person she calls is tentative. Well, the first option is it fails. So that one ends. The next option is it's tentative. Well, that stops too, because then we've got a sale, a tentative, right? So, you know, that's the end, and I like to box it up. And then the third option is slightly happier. She makes another sale. And that doesn't stop anything. So let's see what happens. And, you know, again, I'm here, right? So this is what happens if she calls, and the first person she makes a sale with, and the next person she makes another sale. So what are our options over there? Well, the first one is that she fails. Okay. Well, that's, again, nice and easy. Just stops. Second option, it's tentative. And sale, tentative doesn't mean anything, so we're going to keep on going on that one. But we do have a third one, and I like this one because now we have a sale, and a sale, and if she gets 3 sales in a row, she's done for the day. So that one stops. So, you know, really fast, we're whittling down this tree, and we only have a couple of active branches to do, and I like that because that makes our job a lot easier. So let's go down here. And let me highlight what I'm working on right now so you can kind of see where we're at. I'm going to use a nice black again so you can really see. So let's see, we're at this point where she made the first call, it was tentative. She made the second call, it was a sale. She made the third call, it was a sale. So let's see what the options were on that one. The first option, and you know, again, I like to really make sure that I'm keeping things in order, and I started with fails first, so I'm going to keep on with that. The tentative sale failure, and that terminates right there. That's a nice leaf. Tentative sale tentative, and you know, we had 2 tentatives in one branch, so that stops right there. And then finally, tentative sale, and I think we're getting towards the end of our tree because that one stops too, because that had 3 sales in a row, right? So that one's done. Okay, so let's move up, and again, I'm going to highlight where we're at because it can get really confusing really fast. We're at sale, then she made a call, it was tentative, then she made another sale. So what are our options here? Well, first of all, she could fail to make a sale, and that would be the end of that. Second, it could be another tentative, and that's, you know, 2 tentatives in one branch, right? So that stops. And then finally, it could be a sale, and that's, you know, sale, tentative, sale is 3 sales, and she stops right there. So let's see, and we're on the final branch, and I have a feeling this one's gonna end up stopping too. Let me trace it. So she made a sale, she has a tentative on the line. What are her options? So again, her first option is a failure. And you know, I'm running out of room, but that's part of the problem with trees, is that you're potentially going to run out of room. That's why here I tried to color code them so you could keep kind of track. So, she made a sale, it was tentative, so, what's her next option? Tentative, right? And there's 2 tentatives in a row right there, so that stops. And then finally, she could make a sale, a tentative, and then a final sale, and that's 3 sales in one branch, and that finishes off the tree. We have no more branches at this point. So let's go ahead and zoom out and let's answer the question, which is how many different outcomes are there, or how many entries would be in her log. And so when I hear that, I think tree. So and this is why I like to box the leaves on my tree, because this lets me kind of, end up counting much easier. So I'm actually going to go ahead and circle in a bright yellow, so hopefully you can see. So I've got a fail here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and if you'll notice, I'm kind of trying to follow each tree down. It makes it easier. 12, hopefully I didn't lose count. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, and so that leads us to our answer. There are 19 different options. So, let's step back for a second and kind of talk about what we did. So the very first thing we did is we decided what our 3 options, or however many options. Typically they don't do more than like 3 or 4, and if they do, they don't make your tree very deep, because that would be brutal. So we had 3 options. We chose what our abbreviations would be. Then we started our tree. So I like to do from the top down. So I go down. I like to keep things in order, so my fails were always on the left, right? My tentatives were always on the bottom, and my sales were always on the right. And this is just something, especially, you're doing this in pencil, there's no way to tell, there's no different colors. It's a lot harder to keep things straight. Don't be afraid to spread out. Make sure you get some scratch paper when you take your tests, and really, really spread out, because trees are a big deal, and it's something you're going to be using a lot, and you're going to see them a lot later on in the semester, and so it's important to kind of feel comfortable with them at this point. So I think once you do a couple, you'll find they're not so bad. They're a little bit fun. You get to doodle a little bit, and I think you'll find them a little annoying because they're huge, but not so bad.